everyone, Mike Vogel here with another edition of Break the Ice, joined as always by crack producer Zach Garrett, and joined today by Calle Johansson, one of the all-time greats in Washington Capitals history. It's the 50th anniversary season here, Calle, and I feel like you came in at a kind of an early juncture of that. Team had only been around 12, 13 years by the time you got here, but I want to dial it back a little bit before that. The 1985 draft, you and Ulf Dahlen were the only two European players taken in the first round of that draft. There are a couple of high school kids, one college kid, everybody else Canadian junior.
Right.
And nowadays you look at the first round or any round of an NHL draft, it's so much more diverse. What was your experience like finding out that you'd been drafted by the Buffalo Sabres? And I know Ulfie, he's one of our all-time favorites here too. You and him, good buddies for most of your lives, I guess.
Yeah. It was obviously not as big. The draft wasn't as huge as it is now. The players were never there. Maybe the North American guys went to the draft, but not Europeans. But me and Ulfie actually played on the same team that year in Sweden. And like you said, we were great buddies. And we're on vacation in Greece in June when the draft was. So he got the call in the middle of the night there. And from the New York Rangers, he got drafted as number 7. And we all celebrated, and it was fun and games and really good time. And then about an hour later, or whatever it was, I don't know, 2, whatever, the Buffalo Sabres called, and I got drafted too. So we had a blast. It was fun. It was so fun. 2 best buddies get drafted in the first round, and we're on vacation, and everybody was celebrating. That's a great memory still.
And you guys waited a couple of years to come over and go to training camp in the NHL. I think you were 20 when you came to Buffalo. And I remember you telling me that you and Ulfie kind of got each other through that time. There weren't a lot of Europeans, definitely not as many in the league then as now. Who are the guys who kind of, aside from Ulfie, because obviously he's playing with the Rangers, you're in Buffalo.
Right.
Who are the guys that sort of helped you through that? Because I know you guys were on the phone a lot and kind of helping each other through some homesickness.
We did, and I'm not going to lie and say everything was great, because you get homesick. You miss your friends. You know, I know you get new friends here, but you miss your old friends and family, of course. But one person that got me through it really good too, we spoke on the phone quite a bit, was another Caps, Ben Gustafsson. Yeah, we spoke a lot, and him and my wife, they're from the same little town in Sweden, so we had that in common. So we always hung out when we were in Sweden and stuff. So he was a big part of that beginning for me.
And then late in that your second, I mean, you had a really good rookie season. In Buffalo, right. You got injured real early, maybe the first week or two in your second year, and that turned out to be a struggle. But you get traded to Washington late. What do you remember about finding out that you were coming to Washington? And like you just said, you mentioned Bent. He was here.
Yeah.
And so you were going to a place where you had a buddy.
I'm not saying this just because it happened to Washington, but I was thrilled, to be honest with you. I was, because I wanted to play with Gus, and it's the nation's capital. It kind of symbolizes USA for some reason. I don't know. Nothing bad about Buffalo, but you can't compare it to Washington. I think this is a better area. I was really happy to come here. Really happy.
There was one funny thing I noticed about that Buffalo blue line when you were there, though.
Yeah.
It seemed like every guy that was on that blue line went on to become a coach somewhere.
Yeah.
Like Lindy Ruff, Mike Ramsey,
Phil Housley,
yeah. Uwe Krupp, too.
Uwe Krupp, right.
Everybody but Ricky. I think.
Yeah.
He wound up staying in the game, too.
Yeah.
Was there anything about that? Did you recognize that in those other guys? Do you think they recognized that in you? Because I always thought
No,
you'd
I
make
never
a
thought
good
about it.
coach.
That was a great point by you. I never thought about it, but wow, yeah, everybody became a coach. I don't know. I don't know why. To be honest with you, I don't know.
And then you do get here, and you're kind of the bridge of an era because you came in at the very end of the Brian Murray era. You actually got here the same day that Mike Gardner and Larry Murphy were traded elsewhere. So
Right.
it was a real shift in the way things were going here in Washington because there had been a lot of playoff disappointment. And your first full year here, you guys under Terry Murray get to the conference final.
Right.
What was that like to just hop in here and get to the third round because the team hadn't been there?
No, it was fun. It was the first time for me too. Played hockey and felt like summertime. It was you walk around in shorts and you're playing hockey. It was a great feeling. But I think I don't know. I gave Dave Poyle a lot of credit for that. He had a some kind of feeling putting a team together at the end there, and he made everybody comfortable. Was like a big family, everybody, and I give him a lot of credit to that.
Yeah, he also didn't have the constrictions of a salary cap.
No, exactly.
He was able to really sense the right time to make the right moves for those teams to keep them in the playoffs pretty much every year. And there were so many good defensemen here too. Even after Larry was traded the same day that you arrived, you come into a team with Scott Stevens, Rod Langway, Kevin Hatcher, and then you're still here when the next wave comes along. The guys like Iafredi, Cote, Sergei Gonchar. And,
right.
I mean, the year that Hatcher, Cote, and Iafredi all scored 20 goals in the same season, which I don't know that that'll ever happen again.
Doubt it.
It never happened before. It hasn't happened since. You're fourth on that team in scoring among defensemen with 45 points, which these days that would lead a lot of teams. What was it like playing on a team that had that dynamic offense? Because Bondra had emerged as a legitimate scorer by then. Dmitry Kristich was having good seasons then. This team was a really good offensive juggernaut.
Yeah, and like you said, we never had that before, and it was fun because you knew when you stepped on the ice that we can score 5 goals, we can score 6 goals, and even if we're down by 2, you kind of had a feeling that no problem, we're going to score. We had a good PP, and there was a threat in every line basically that we put on the ice. So it was a comfortable feeling. It was a good feeling.
And speaking of your game specifically, for me, you were always like one of the top two-way defensemen in the league. You could be trusted in any situation. You could play on the power play, shorthanded, last minute of game, shift after a goal. I mean, anytime a coach needed somebody he could trust, I mean, you were out there. You were such a smooth skater. You used your body well. Your first stride was so strong and powerful. You had thighs that were like redwoods. I felt like in those days. Was that? I know you did some water skiing back home.
Yeah.
Too. Do you feel like that that water skiing helped?
It could have been. Yeah, it could have been. It's. I think it helped. Maybe it's not so much with the strength, but for balance. I think it was a good balance thing. A lot of water skiing in the summertime, and it was kind of early, but a lot of windsurfing and water skiing. I think that helped the balance. And no matter how strong you are, if you don't have the balance, you're not going to make it. So I think it was because of that.
I know growing up when you did that, Borje Salming was a big influence for you too. But I know in those days too, media wasn't as prevalent. So I remember you telling me that he was kind of more of a myth than something real, because it wasn't like you were sitting in front of the TV and watching him night after night. But I know even in the 90s, you know, when we first talked about it, the reverence that you had for him. But I feel like as the years have gone by, it's just more proof of what an absolute pioneer and rock star he was as a defenseman and as a human being in this game.
Absolutely. And obviously everybody knows sad thing what happened to him, and he passed away last year. But it is he's helped. I would say he helped the whole Swedish hockey hockey community to become what it is, because he came over here, and it's one thing to come over here and play and be good, but being loved that he was by everybody and in Toronto. And I don't know if you remember, you probably do, but 1976, I think it was, when they played Canada, Sweden played Canada Cup, and the lineup on the ice, they put out the biggest names in Toronto. They played a game in Toronto, and they put out the biggest names for Canada, and one of them was Derek Sittler, played with Borje in Toronto, and then said his name. They gave him an applaud. But when they introduced Borje, the whole building stood up, and he's playing for Sweden in Toronto, and the announcer had to quiet the audience so they could continue the lineup. He was such a popular guy, and those things made a lot of impressions in Sweden. Like, he is the man, and he's always been a good guy. He's never done anything stupid and behaved bad. He's just a good all-around person, you know. So he's meant a lot to Sweden.
He put up with a lot in the early days. Him and Inge Hammerstrom both came over around the same time, and honestly changed the face of pro hockey in North America. Yeah, I think. Coming out of that lockout season, you guys missed the playoffs. David made one last big trade, the Adam Oates trade with Boston. There didn't get in the playoffs, and there's a coaching change. Ron Wilson comes in, George McPhee comes in. It's still David's team. You guys get to the Cup final there in 1998. What do you remember about that season? Because it was a season of change. You early in the season, you play your last game at US Air Arena. Rod's sweater goes to the rafters, and then you move downtown. And 6 months later, you're playing in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, weird. But we actually made some trades that you know of late in the season, and he's not here today. But I think, and I'm almost positive that one of the biggest reasons we made it all the way to the finals was Isa Tikkanen.
Absolutely right.
What do you think?
He shadowed Jason Allison in that first round series. Yeah. He shadowed Alexei Yashin in that second round series. I was told actually that he showed up at the same restaurant as Yashin somewhere early in that series and went up to his table and says, "I'm here too. I'm still shadowing you. We're not even playing hockey right now."
No, and he was so great on the ice, but off the ice, he had won like 5 cups with Edmonton or something, right? So he knew what it took. And he said to us when the playoffs started, guys, if we lose a game, we lose 2, we lose 3, do not care. We will win it. We might play 7 games in each round, so do not get too high when you win and don't get too down when you lose. And I think everybody took that to themselves and believed in it, you know. So even if we didn't have the greatest team, but we believed, and we did what we were supposed to do to win games. Unfortunately, we had Detroit, who was a fantastic team at that time, and we could have won that series too, maybe, but Isa Tikkanen, one of the major reasons we went to the finals.
And you mentioned the trades that George made.
Yeah,
that was the one. And then he also claimed Brian Bellows off waivers, which was controversial at the time because he had been playing in Germany, and that was a loophole. This is George's first year as a GM. He's not even 40 years old. He finds this little loophole, gets his player in. People like Bobby Clark and other established GMs are, screaming and bloody murder, and that loophole gets closed. But Bellows scored a couple of big goals for you guys in the playoffs. Double overtime in Boston.
Yeah, tell me about it. No, everything kind of fell into place, and that's what you have to happen to go all the way. It is.
And I think Ole, that was the year that Ole put himself on the map, too.
Yeah.
There was the end of that Ottawa series, the second round series. He shut him out the last 2 games, and I think it was the last 150 minutes. And that was a really good Ottawa team.
Do you remember, and Mike, seriously, when you said the Ottawa series, do you remember one of those games we played in Ottawa? They won the shots. I'll never forget this. 52-11, I think. We were in our end the whole game. And we won the game 2-0 or 2-1 or something.
I do. You guys were outshot in all 5 of the games in that series, and just about doubled up in shot totals. I mean, just something like 160-89 or something, some crazy amount. But there was one game where I feel like you guys scored on 3 or 4 straight shots on Damien Rhodes. So it was kind of the opposite. Your guy was stopping everything, and you were finding the holes at the other end of the ice, which. Again, you had Peter Bonder, who scored 52 goals that year to lead the league, but beyond him, I think the next guy was Connor Walchuk with like 18. So you guys were getting scoring by committee, and also some good fortune where you had home ice advantage in the first round against Boston, but all the teams ahead of you get knocked out in that first round, and you wind up getting home ice all the way through.
It was. A lot of good things happen.
When you look back on your career, who were the coaches that, when you were an assistant later on, whose voices did you hear in your head? Who were the coaches that you thought were the best at what they did?
Brian Murray and Ron Wilson. Absolutely. I tried to pick a little bit of each, but good coaches, knew the game. Brian was a marvelous human being.
Yes,
he was unbelievable. He knew when to get mad, and he knew when to be soft on guys, or whatever you want to call it. But he was a huge part of when I was coaching. I took a lot from him.
When I watched John Carlson last year at the age of 34 playing 25-plus minutes every night, I was reminded of you because you were doing the same thing into your early 30s, mid-30s, leading the team in shifts and ice time. How was your conditioning in those days to be able to do that? I don't feel like the emphasis was on conditioning so much then, but you had the body that permitted you to play those hard minutes, even into your mid-30s until the Rotator Cup.
Right. Yeah. You know what? I think it is it's something you get used to. Also, it's you learn how to play. You learn how to position yourself on the ice. You can play 30 really hard minutes if you don't know what you're doing. I don't
that makes sense.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you watch Carly. He knows where to be on the ice. He might. I don't want to call it cheating, as I say, anticipating.
Yeah, right.
You anticipate the puck is going to come over there, so he can start skating a little slower instead of when the puck gets there, he's got to rush for it. So he conserves energy like that. I think
it's reading and reacting.
Yeah,
is
it
what
is.
You're saying.
Yeah.
When you. Your last season here, you played all 82 games. Again, played. I think you were 35 that year. Disappointing finish in the playoffs for sure. Yeah. The triple overtime loss, and then you got into pro scouting briefly. I think here with Washington.
Yes, I did.
And then Toronto pulled you out of retirement. What happened there that you? There must have been something inside you when things ended in Washington that you still wanted. You still had the hunger.
I did actually, and the funny thing is, I wasn't really hungry in April when we got beat out, in May when we got beat out of the playoffs. At that time, it was like, okay, now it's over, unfortunately, but new part of life is starting. But then the summer passed and the fall came, and I skated with the guys back home in Sweden, and Toronto called. And the thing was, they called in October and they said, "Oh, would you like to play?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, I might, I might. And they said, great, we'll call you. I'll call you back. All right. And he never called. And I'm thinking, okay, so it's over. And I stopped skating. I skated maybe once a week, and that was it. Then March rolls around.
I was going to say that.
And he calls like right before the deadline. And I said, "Well, you're calling now. It was in October last time." And I said, "Well, you got to give me 2 weeks to get ready."
Yeah.
No. If you're coming tomorrow. So I had like 24 hours to pack and decide
God.
and everything. So it was fun. It was good and all that. But looking back, maybe I shouldn't have done it because I wasn't really prepared for it, hockey-wise.
But it had to at least convince you that, okay,
exactly. It was
left
an
on
ending.
your terms.
Yeah, I did, and it was a good ending. It was fun. And it's they could have called in January and said, "Hey, get ready," but they didn't. But it was fun. It was good.
And the other thing that stood out to me about your playing career was your international career, because you play in a couple world championships and I know that's kind of a mixed bag for you guys, because it means that you didn't go far over here. But I thought the 1996 World Cup of Hockey was some amazing hockey. You were on Team Sweden for that.
Right.
Played in the Nagano Olympics. You were captain of the team in Nagano, and you came off, I think you had missed like a month here.
Right here. That was the first.
And your first game back was in the Olympics.
It was.
What was that experience like, jumping back in at that level?
I tell you what, it wasn't the best thing, but in the Olympics, as you all know, it's not like World Cup. You don't play Canada, Russia, Czech, Finn. You start off. I'm not saying they're bad,
Right.
but you know what I mean. They're not as good. So we might play Kazakhstan for first game, and then another not so great hockey nation. So I don't want to call it exhibition games, but it was a lower tempo. I eased my way into it. Yeah. So it was okay. Yeah.
And I know you had wanted to play in the '02 Olympics in Salt Lake City, but that was when you had the
rotator cuff.
Did you feel like that kind of hastened your exit from the game?
Yeah, that really
feel like
bothers
you weren't
me.
the same player when you came back.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It bugs me that it happened because it was my own fault. That's the thing. I'm a strong believer in, and somebody's gonna get mad at me for saying this, but I think at least half of the injuries could be prevented by playing smarter. Like a lot of injuries are caused by the people that get injured.
Putting yourselves in a vulnerable spot.
Very much so. And I did. It was a stupid thing. It's something that I'd never done before. I would never do it again. I just was a little lazy, and I didn't respect the opponent as I should have. He was faster than I thought he was, or I skated slower, and we got tangled up, and we both fell. My rotator cuff, and he ruptured his muscle in his chest. So he was gone the whole year too.
Who I remember it was Carolina. Who was the player?
No, it was Boston.
Was it Boston?
Yeah, it was Boston. It was big defenseman. What's his name? Huge, tall.
Hal Gill.
Yeah. And but it was my own fault, and it bugs me till this day that it happened. It kind of, excuse my language, it really pisses me off that I did that.
It's a tough injury for sure.
Yeah.
You came back here when Adam Oates was the head coach. You were the assistant coach for a couple of years, and those were the early days of John Carlson's development.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? And were you interested in continuing as a coach here or back home or anything like that?
Not really. It was a great experience, but I've always said if I'm coaching, it would be as an assistant coach because I like to be hands-on with the players. If I can take care of my 8 defensemen or 6 or 10 or whatever we have on the team, but I want to be more private, like not private, but you know what I mean, one-on-one. I can go in deeper, dig deeper inside you, you know, and but also not just the coach. I want to do it with the head coach I really respect, that I like, that thinks hockey the same way I do, and Ozzy was one of those.
Yeah.
And that same opportunity hasn't presented himself after, so nothing. I'm done basically coaching.
Well, what's it been like for you this weekend to you know, I mean, you spent so many years here as a player and some time here as a coach too, to see, and you, I mean, you're kind of one of the people that built this up to what it is now, and honestly, it's so different here than obviously 1974, but 1984, 1994, 2004.
Right.
You were here for those last 3. But how amazing is it to see, you know, all these faces, familiar faces? Maybe the hair's a little grayer, but the guys that you battled with, and to see hockey in DC being celebrated like this.
Yeah, it is. It warms my heart, because it's, like I said, this is my second home. My family's second home. They all love it here. And we actually said the other night when we were sitting here, is that, why did we ever move away from here? It's great. But you know what happens, family and relatives and all that over in Sweden. But anyway, we just love coming here. And I think this whole thing they're doing now, the Caps, with this 50th celebration is huge. I've never been anything like it before. I never seen so many people or players, and everybody's laughing, having a good time. And no, Mike, it's heartwarming. It is, to be honest with you. I know it sounds like stupid, but it really feels inside me.
No, it's heartwarming for me to see all you guys and to see you guys enjoying it. And I'm glad the organization's done such a great job of putting this on, because I think all you guys deserve it. It's fantastic to see the growth of the game and the sport and everything over the period of time. But you had an awful lot to do with it.
Well, I was just fortunate enough to have great people around me that helped me go through everything, and I'm a lucky man. I've been a part of it.
Well, we're lucky to have had you here for so long, and thank you again for stopping by here today. Hope you enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thanks to Calle Johansson for spending some time with us today on Break the Ice.